Hey folks, welcome back to the Becoming series, exploring the deep truths and the principles that will enable you become everything you were created to be and to do. So let's talk about influence. Influence, the great I word. Um, what does it mean to be influential? Now, for me, influence is a key component of leadership, right? And of course, when we're talking about leadership, you'd see that a lot of definitions tend to revolve around this word. For instance, John C. Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, which is true, right? But if you say that leadership is influence, then what is influence? What does it mean to be influential, right? When you say that somebody is influential, what do you mean? Because until you understand what that really means, you're just stuck at the high level summary. I want to be influential, but what does it mean? Right now, in order for you to be influential, or let's even start with the meaning of it. What does it mean to be influential? It means that when you when you do stuff or you say stuff, people follow you. That's that's really what it means. Simply put, you know, discounting all the high conceptual words and all that. At the bottom of it, at the root of it, that is what influence means. When you say something and you do something, and people follow you, you are influential. It means that um, people set aside their priorities for you, right? Yeah, and everybody has priorities. Everybody has things that they want to do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, right? Everybody has things that they want to do, that they plan to do, that they need to do, that they want to bring into existence or whatever it is. But when people who have their own plans and their own priorities set aside those things in order to follow somebody else, that means that that person is influential, has some influence over them, right? Now, going back to what John Maxwell said about leadership being influence, that's true, like I said, but is that all there is to it? Because you can have good influence and you can have bad influence. What do I mean? So, if you're in the US, for instance, you know that, or anywhere else, really, not just in the US, you know that if you're driving and you've been taking a lot of alcohol, right, or you've been doing some substance abuse, drugs, etc., when you're caught, the charge that they bring against you is something called a DUI. A DUI means, it's an acronym, it means driving under influence, right? It means that you have taken some stuff, whether it's alcohol, or any of that stuff that has influenced your thinking or your faculties such that you're not necessarily driving the way you're supposed to drive. So that's a criminal offense. So when you say that leadership is influence, yes, right? But what sort of influence do we really desire if we're talking about real leadership? So it means that influence needs to be qualified, right? But we'll get to that later. Right now, we're talking about influence as it is. And I said that essentially it's when people set aside their priorities to follow you, right? So it means that there's something that you're exhibiting that is making them do that. People don't just follow you because they feel like, right, or because they like your face, or any of that. It means that you have done something that has impacted them in some way. And I've discovered that for you to have real influence, you must have one of two things, right? You must either have wealth or you must be successful, right? Those are the two things that make people listen to you, make them want to follow you, right? When they see that you're either wealthy or successful, because everybody understands the power of wealth, but also everybody understands the power of success. People don't like to associate or don't associate with people who are not successful because it's like, what is this guy able to do? All right, why should I follow him? But when they see that, this dude is doing some stuff, his name is in the media, or he has $1 billion or whatever, people are like, oh wow, okay, right. So let's at least listen to what this guy has to say, and from there you get some people. It will happen. That is a given. You will get people to follow you. If you have either wealth or you have success. Um, so how do you develop influence at the end of the day? For you to be influential, like I said, you must have one of those two things. And basically it boils down to success, because um, for you to be wealthy, it means you must have been successful at something, at making money, at building a great business or a great enterprise, for instance. So at the root of it, if I were to use one word, it's really about success. So it means you must do something successfully that grabs the attention of people, and that makes them want to learn more about you or want to follow you, right? Because they've seen that you've done something successful. You've got their attention, right? And it also calls to mind um, something about Jesus, right? Which you also find in the scripture. Now you possibly remember that when he started his ministry, he knew that he needed to have a team around him, right? So he set about gathering them together, and he first started with um, two sets of brothers. If you remember the story, um, you know, Peter and Andrew and James and John. Now, who were they? They were fishermen, right? And they were professional fishermen. They weren't just people who just decided to go out in a boat and and throw a net in the river. They were actually professionals. That was their thing, right? That was their profession. But when he met them, they had a failed mission, right? They had been slaving at the sea all night, and they had caught nothing. Now remember that these guys are professionals. They're not just, like I said, they're not just amateurs. They're not novices. They knew what they were doing. They knew how to catch fish. They were professional, trained fishermen. But they had failed, right, in this particular mission. So here comes Jesus, and he says, "Okay, why don't you guys cast your nets onto the other side?" Now, all the things that he was telling them to do were quote unquote the wrong things, right? It's like you've built a business, for instance, and you have been doing pretty well, but you experience a downturn, and somebody comes and tells you, okay, why don't you sell off all your inventory, and just no, don't even sell it off, just give them out. And you're like, are you crazy? Everybody knows that if you want to reduce inventory, you have to sell it, right? Because that's the way business operates. You have to reduce the inventory by selling it. That is how you make money. But this person comes and says, no, don't sell it, just give it out. Immediately you're thinking this guy has to be nuts. So that's essentially what Jesus was telling them to do. He said, forget about all the stuff that you've been doing, that you have learned over a period of 20 or 30 years, and just try this other method. So they could have had a choice of saying this guy is nuts, and possibly, very possibly, that's what they were thinking. But they were like, okay, fine, we've tried every other thing, we might as well just like whatever, right? But they did that, and they got results. Now, what happens? It means that he has caught their attention, because we're not just talking about one fish or two fish or three fish. We're talking about a whole haul of fish, and it was recorded that the nets were almost breaking. So it was a lot of fish, possibly much more than they had caught at any one time. So immediately he catches their attention, right? And they're like, "Who is this guy?" In fact, the gospel records one of the gospel records that Peter said, "What manner of man is this?" That what that means is that, dude, you are not normal, right? You have separated yourself from other people by doing something that no normal person could do, right? So that's really what it means when you separate yourself from the pack, right? That is when you're distinguished because people are looking at you and they're saying, "Oh, this guy is, or this lady, or this woman, she's just something new, something different." We haven't seen this type. We haven't seen this sort of person before. This person is not a normal person. This person is a different breed, a different kettle of fish. You've caught their attention and you have done something successful. So it means that when you ask them to do stuff, they're more than likely to do so because they have seen what you can do. Which is why when Jesus said, "Follow me," they immediately dropped their nets. Immediately. There was no hesitation. So influence is key, in the journey to becoming, because to become yourself, it means that you must exhibit everything that is within you and you must be able to impact people. But you can't impact people without being influential. So it means that you must develop the principles, you must adhere to some principles that will enable you to be successful in your chosen or in your calling, right? Um, that gives you that impact. So let's strive for influence.